Shoyo sampo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda pege drolor zambe ze parache palden lame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sungi Nawa Tsedo So Seji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dejen Korlo Viso Lekshune Yila Sambe Dedema Lepa Geme Lungi Drupra Jingelo Soni Sodan Digdun Shape Tse Dungi Namke Labchen tsonyi yonsu tsoba dan chera nyedun chamra chingelo chancho parge nyinsen tukun tu nyu peme siudru lekshune chancho drube gegen kunshishi tungen dela drubra chingelo dagi lona chola chokpa dan chemin samjur ngemba shiwa dan chodan tumbe dodun malupa beme lungi drubra chingelo Dorna tingne tsirava tamche dan techi pardu nekava tamche tu rese kyamne lama kele me tukche chengi dala sikso so gongyab rewe nyamta dacha la jetsun lame tuche rab gongne kodan sungi nawa dralme tu nyamsu nyongwe kesan topra sho kewa kundu yanda lama dan rame cheki Sadan lamge yende rabzone dorje change kopa nyurtobe shoya pakyuke kudan dagilu pakyuke sundan dagianga pakyuke tudan dagiyi ten yerme çıktı Chingelo makyuke kudan dagelu makyuke sundan dagenga makyuke tudan dageyi tün yerme çıktı Chingelo Muni Mahamuni Shakya shipu ki chu shi me to tamari raba ling shi ni de gem pa di sangye shin tu mik de ula war ki dro kun nam da shin la che par sho yi dam guru ratna mindra la kam niryata yami Sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dage jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchre sangye drupare sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dage chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye drupar sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dage chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye drupar sho
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Aye akeda ludan jinke rubundanda mi kenamdam ruwakunge dranam che tsampa tamche keto dagi cheten to tamche keto dagi cheten. Come ci siamo detti
As we said
in diversi momenti
in
questi giorni,
As we said other times
una
in
delle
these
cose
days,
chiavi, uno dei punti
one
chiavi nel
key
nostro
point
percorso
along our path
è quello di
is
permetterci
allowing
e riuscire
ourselves
di
to
immaginare noi stessi
imagine ourselves
nel risultato, come un Buddha,
as
come
a
essere in
Buddha,
pace con noi.
as the result of what we want, in peace with ourselves.
Perché alla fine,
Because
no,
at the
gira,
end of the
gira,
day, round and
una delle
round,
cose più
we go.
importanti
One of the
che
most
c'è
important
è
things that
la
exists
nostra
is
voglia.
is our desire, our passion, what we want. And the more often we have an experience about something, at the beginning maybe conceptual, but when we're able to have non-conceptual experiences of a state of peace, a state of something that we can imagine, that will bring us naturally to have more desire for that thing. One thing is imagining something that comes from a conceptual process. Another thing is when we can actually feel those moments, when we have a deeper experience, an experience that goes beyond words. And somehow we need to connect with this experience to direct our actions, to direct ourselves to what we really want. Along our path, one way to do this, and in the practice of self-healing, at this moment, and I want to get right to the point because we have so many things to still see, and when I give these long introductions, we spend hours on these introductions and we don't get to what we wanted to talk about. Let's imagine someone that for us represents a state of joy. We can imagine someone in a particular moment even. Someone who transmits joy. When I think of joy, I think about that person and that moment, that situation. In this moment, for example, it makes in this moment I think about the moment that I met Mother Teresa. I felt that her presence brought a particular, special and beautiful joy. So if we remember that state, that person, that situation, and imagine somehow to actually melt into the other, and we allow ourselves little by little to, we let ourselves, we entrust ourselves into the other, and we melt into the other, we become one. Our mind rests on the mind of this other person. In this case, we think about a moment of joy or peace, gratitude, of love, and so forth. And so sometimes for us it's tiresome to try to imagine ourselves in this way. It's easier to connect with someone that represents that for us. And when we connect with that someone else that represents this state of peace and love, at that point we allow ourselves gradually to get closer, to diminish the distance until our mind, our being rests onto his or hers. I'm trying to put into words something that really goes beyond words. So let's start by thinking about someone. It can be a parent, a friend, a child, anyone, spiritual guide, someone that for us, someone that represents for us a certain quality that we would like to perfect, like joy or gratitude. So let's imagine ourselves, let's imagine this person, and it's as if we melted and we become one and inseparable, and our being rests on his or her mind, in his or her mind. And one tries to rest in this state, to stay in this state, and resting in the mind of the other, we try to feel this joy until there's no difference between my joy and the other's joy. It's one thing. The more I'm able to stay in this state, the more I'm able to familiarize myself with this state of consciousness. And I use the other like a bridge, like a hook, to bring me to this state that, left alone to my own devices, is difficult for me. Do you understand? It's a very powerful method, because very often it's hard for us to recognize our own potential, and to pull out certain characteristics or qualities, or imagine ourselves in a different way. So let's imagine someone that we trust, someone whose qualities are real, are visible, and it's described that in this case, our mind is like clay, a piece of clay, and the mind of the other that we imagine is the actual potter who makes the shape of the vase, of statue, whatever. So our mind experiences the joy, but the condition came through the work of the other. Because if I'm close to you and I feel a special joy, I mean, this joy comes from me or comes from you? Comes from me, comes from oneself, because we're not able to feel something that we can't feel. So the other is a condition through which I feel something that I have the potential to feel. If I didn't have that potential to feel it, I wouldn't feel it. So one of the functions of what is called Guru Yoga practice is when we use the image of the Guru, and I don't want to go into too many details, because then this is another subject that we can spend days on. What is the Guru? What does he or she represent? Etc., etc. But in essence, it's the embodiment of the qualities that we want to develop. We connect in that way. And what is closer to us? Someone that we have a loving relationship of trust, of love, someone someone whose eyes I can look into and feel something, or a statue, an image of a Buddha that I've never met. What touches us? What touches us more? We're all different, but theoretically, generally speaking, it's the person who has touched our heart. That's a much greater power of interaction. And what we do, we connect with this person. And I'm trying to be short. We use the term Guru Buddha. It's not specifically one person. It's the image of this person that represents the union of all of our masters, of all of those who guide us, all of that which is sacred to us. And the Guru Buddha goes beyond one person. One master said, when we visualize Guru Buddha, it's like a kind of hologram with different aspects, many beings in one. We can have many guides along our path, and then there is the guide, who is the embodiment of all of the others, but actually all represent a guide. What we're doing at this moment of the practice, and now I go into the more practical, technical part, but everyone needs to have his own experience. We visualize Guru Buddha in front of us, remembering that Guru Buddha is what for us. And we have to see how we connect, but he or she represents the holy, the sacred, represents the state of Buddha manifest materially. And as we recite the mantras, here in this case, the mantra we recite is Om A Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum, Om A Hum, Om A Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum, Om A Hum, body, speech, and mind. Om is the body, A is speech, and Hum is the mind. A being is made of body, speech, and mind. Guru, inseparable from all Buddhas. Siddhi, Hum, Siddhi means realization. So, bless me so that I can obtain the realizations of body, speech, and mind. O Guru Buddha, may I be able to receive the blessings. In other words, may my body be like your body. May my speech be like your speech. May my mind be like your mind. May my characteristics be like yours. Obviously, we're not talking only about a course level. It's not that if I do the Guru Yoga, focusing on Lama Rinpoche, it's not that I take on his physical aspects. No, this goes beyond. So from his 5 chakras, there's from the 5 chakras, they're white from the crown, red from the throat, blue from the heart, yellow from the navel, and green from the secret chakra. And as we do Oma Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum, we make this mudra, and then I'll explain just a bit about it. It's the mudra it's the prayer mudra, where we're putting together left and right, method and wisdom. And so we do this mudra at each one of our chakras as the light and nectar absorbs into us from his respective chakras. As these light rays absorb into us, it's almost as if our mind gets closer to his, and little by little we start getting closer and closer. We start being similar more and more. Our mind rests in his mind, and our qualities are reinforced and become stronger, and our defilements become weaker. I'm in the presence of love, and that makes my love stronger, and naturally my hatred and my anger diminish. I'm in the presence of generosity, and so my miserliness diminishes. It's like this. These are the characteristics of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas that I talked about yesterday, and we connect with each one of these qualities through the lights and nectars, the multicolored lights and nectars from each of the 5 chakras, and that's when we recite Om Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum. You can do it once for every chakra, or 5 times per chakra, or 5 or more. You can do 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, or one can also, without doing the mudra, just reciting this mantra, giving more emphasis to this part of the practice. And beyond the visualization, the key is allowing ourselves gradually to feel the presence, the qualities of Guru Buddha and little by little allow ourselves to rest in the mind of Guru Buddha. And this is what we call relative Guru Yoga. And there's also absolute Guru Yoga, which is not explicitly described here in the practice of self-healing, where once we finish Om Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum, we visualize an emanation of Guru Buddha that comes towards us, enters through our crown, sits joyously in the middle, through the middle of our central channel at our heart. And at that point, we allow our mind, we allow our being with all of its aspects of body, speech, and mind to melt into his. And we become one and inseparable with Guru Buddha. We experience a deep state of balance, stability, love, joy, harmony, wisdom, etc. And it's as if through Guru Buddha we experience what it means to be a Buddha. And the more we're able to do this meditation and let go of our ordinary appearance, because we're quite attached to being angry or being jealous or being resentful. But so instead, letting go, and the more we're able to let go of this and relax, the more we'll be able to identify ourselves with this state until that experience becomes deeper and no longer only conceptual. I think that as a practice it's quite clear, isn't it? So we do this, and here one can stay as long as one can. A few seconds, 2 hours, it depends on each one's ability to stay in this state. And it's the same visualization that we do when we do Pakyuke Kudan. Sorry, Pakyuke Kudan. Pakyuke Kudan Dagi. Pakyuke Sudan Dagi. Pakyuke Tudan Dagi. Tonya Mechindo Jingelo. And here too, we're asking for the blessings of body, speech, and mind become inseparable, ours with the one of Guru Buddha. So this emanation comes to us, enters through our crown, through our central channel, sits at our heart chakra on top of a sun and moon cushion, which is actually our very subtle mind and body. And when Guru Buddha sits there, that light that emanates from the sun and moon cushion at our heart, representing our subtle mind and body, it melts together with Guru Buddha. At that point, it's possible to conclude the practice and do our dedications. Or if one has the intention of not doing more and doing only the practice of Guru Yoga, at that point it's not an emanation of Guru Buddha that comes to us, but it's actually Guru Buddha visualized in front of us that comes and absorbs into us. If there's a continuation after another practice that follows, it's an emanation. Instead, if the practice ends here, then with the dedications, that Guru Buddha actually comes and absorbs into us. And then we stay in that state of peace and joy for as long as we can. And then we take again the perception of our body and the environment around us. Because as we're meditating with our being melted into the body, speech, and mind of our Guru Yoga, our focus is inside, not on external stimuli. And the deeper the experience is, the more we lose contact with our external stimuli. We try to disconnect with the outside world and feel that inner experience We allow ourselves to feel what it's like to be a Buddha, of course, depending on each person's ability and the references that one has. After that, we pick up again, and here Guru Buddha is seated at our heart, and we make our dedications, and we do our daily actions with Guru Buddha at our heart. That's when we do Guru Yoga practice. There's the Guru Yoga with Tarachtamani. There's the Guru Yoga of Kala Chakra, of Vajrayogini, the Guru Yoga, many different kinds of the systems of meditation. But Guru Yoga is a fundamental practice. At the beginning of the Guru Puja, for example, there's the part, there's an introduction written by Panchen Chukye Gyatsen, who talks about the importance of Guru Yoga. I just invite everyone to have their own experience. When we do the mantra recitation and the lights and the nectars that come into us, the more we do that, the easier it is to melt into the Guru. The final objective is that fusion as an experience, and that previous part from the time that we invite him and we do the 7-limb practice, the offering, etc. That's a preparation to get there. The moment that we invite Guru Buddha in front of us and we do the practice of the 7 limbs, all the way up to the absorption, these light and nectars that absorb into us, that's relative Guru Yoga. Once Guru Yoga enters into our central channel, into our heart, and our mind melts into his or hers, that's what we call absolute Guru Yoga. And it is absolutely one of the practices that is given the most importance since always. To do it well, there's a moment that we need to allow it. I don't know how actually to put it into words. It's almost like at a certain point we have a kind of attachment to our own identity. Oh, I'm not like this. I can't, fool myself thinking that I'm like this. What am I doing? I'm allowing myself to experience this. Whether I am that or not, that's not the point. The point is letting go of this ordinary appearance, this ordinary idea of ourselves, and we allow ourselves to melt into the mind of Guru Yoga, of our Guru Buddha. It has a lot of power, this practice. And if we look in other religions, there are similar practices. I'm not the one to talk about other religions. I really don't know. But in Vajrayana Buddhism, this is one of the most important practices that exist. Are you following up to here? What we just saw, in reality, all of this is important for any practice you want to do, be it self-healing or the 5 great mothers or any other Vajrayana practice, Yamantaka, Vajrayogini, whatever. These are fundamental concepts that we have somehow It's not that we have to understand. I mean, let's say the better we understand them, the better we'll be able to practice. So more than the technical understanding of it all, it's the actual experience that everyone, the personal experience that you have that becomes important. Now, let's conclude. With this, we conclude the preliminary practices and we go into the actual practice. We can, so does Guru Yoga, let's say that Guru Yoga is a bridge. The request, it's part of the request of blessings, but it's also an opening to the actual practice. I would say that's more part of the preliminary practices. If there's someone, for example, who wants to meditate on compassion, meditate on the correct view of reality, on the Four Noble Truths, or any other type of meditation, the ideal thing would be to start from the preliminary practices. Meditation on breath, generate the motivation, and take refuge in bodhicitta, all the offerings, etc., all the way to the Guru Yoga and the request of the blessings. And then you do your actual practice of meditating on impermanence or whatever it is. But what we've seen is the necessary basis to uphold, to support the other practices that could come afterwards. In the practice of self-healing, on the 5 Dhyani Buddhas together with the 5 great mothers, it's divided, the actual practice is divided into 2 parts. Generation stage, Kerim, and completion stage, Dzogrim. There are different ways to describe what is the generation stage and what is the completion stage. I'm trying to summarize a little bit. It's said that the generation stage is where one trains himself and prepares himself, and the completion stage is when one actually does it, as if I need to do something, but before actually doing it, I need to prepare myself, train in it, and before I actually do it. In the generation stage, that here's the training and the preparation. Okay. What is it that we want to generate? We can say that the practice of self-healing is divided into 2 parts. One first part has to do with generating an identity, where we gradually, more and more, we identify ourselves with the qualities. We identify ourselves with the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. We disconnect also the identity that's related to our negative aspects. More and more we disconnect ourselves from miserliness and arrogance and anger, etc. And more we connect with this state of joy, peace, love, generosity, etc. So it's like we gradually put the pieces together until we complete our image. And once we complete the image, once again we experience this state of love and wisdom and harmony, the state of Buddhahood. And when one is able to generate this as like this most important moment, at that point, that second part, which would be the completion stage, is where we take that state that we have that we're experienced, and then we take it to a subtle and very subtle, subtle and very subtle state. So what happens is we generate more and more an identity that's based on our qualities, the qualities we want to develop. We identify ourselves more and more. We generate this state. And once we're able to generate it completely, we remain in that state. And in that state, from that state, we go into a level of consciousness that is subtle and very subtle. As we said yesterday, our objective is to work on a deeper level, also because our mind has a very particular quality. We talked about this yesterday. I mean, we're this inability to have two opposing thoughts at the same time, but our ignorance and our anger doesn't exist only on a coarse, on a gross level. It exists on a subtle and very subtle level too. So if I'm able to generate a certain virtuous state on a subtle level, I'm opposing that. I'm opposing that on a subtle and then also on a very subtle level. So we generate a virtuous state, and we induce that to we take it deeper to a very subtle to a subtle and then very subtle state. So how do we do that? That first part is called generation stage, and that second part is called completion stage practice. Let's start from generation stage. There's so many things to put together here. As I said yesterday, in these days, I want to give you a part of the explanation, the understanding of self-healing that is not explicitly written, things that go, let's say, things that are between the lines, that are not directly explained, but that are there and are part of the practice. I worry sometimes that maybe some things are too difficult, but I think it's important also to maybe some understand a lot, maybe some understand very little. It's not always possible to explain everything to everyone at the same time. Everyone has his own process of understanding. In the generation stage, this generation stage can be divided into two parts. That first part is generating attitudes, is generating bliss and emptiness and doing the three transformations. And the second part is called the body mandala generation. So the generation stage, we divide it into two parts. This is classic Tibetan, where things are divided into parts. When we study philosophy, for example, there are all the classifications and categories. When you start debating, you start from one point, I don't know, the generation of the lotus flower, and I say, what point is this? Where is it in the classification? The generation of the lotus flower is part of the body mandala generation. What are the other parts that are similar to this? Oh, it's the generation of the seed syllables and the Buddhas. Where does this point come from? This one comes, and we go to the higher level, which would be this is part of the body mandala generation. Okay, so on a parallel level, we have the part of generating bliss and emptiness, and the three transformations, and where do these come from? And then we go backwards. And so we do all this to give context. And once we have given context, then we can start debating. And the point that we want to talk about before talking about it and before asking questions, we need to give a definition. So what is the definition of generating a lotus flower? What does it mean? What does generation mean? What does lotus flower mean? So what does it mean to generate a lotus flower? Do we agree? How many lotus flowers are there? So now we have done classification, definition, and the classification of that which we have classified, and now we can start debating, and then we look for examples. We start looking for lotus flowers that do not correspond to the definition that was given, and that the debate goes on. This is how I studied. This is a classic way of studying Buddhist teachings. This is how it's done. All the times that I had read a philosophy book in Sutra and Tantra, before reading the entire book, what I would do is I would take a highlighter, and I would go through all the structure, the outline, and I would read the outline, the structure, to have a general idea of the outline of the commentary. And then little by little I go from point to point, and I try to understand and put the puzzle pieces together. This is how it's done. So also in self-healing it's the same thing, and from my experience doing like this, it helps us having a more global view where we see all the parts of the puzzle, because here we can also see the Asian way of studying compared to the Western way of studying. For example, there was this boy, if I remember well, he was Spanish, who was the Chinese medicine teacher of a friend. He studied Tibetan medicine with a master in China, and he had studied it really quite well, and at a certain point he asked also to learn calligraphy. And this master, he was a calligraphy teacher and a medicine Chinese medicine teacher, and he had never taught a Westerner calligraphy, but he had been his disciple for traditional Chinese medicine. So he said, okay, so the first lesson, okay, how do you pick up the pen? And he showed him the first ideogram, and then he had him do it a couple times, and this is how you do it. This is the ideogram. And then he came back for the second lesson, and it was the same character. Okay, third lesson, same character. And he said that he started getting nervous. He said, is he making fun of me that I didn't learn the first one well enough? I said, okay, you know, the Chinese, they're different. Okay, let's try. For 2 years, constantly, he would, for every lesson, this master would have him do that same ideogram, that same character. After 2 years, you know, going, I don't know, 3 times a week, doing the same character over and over again. If at a certain point where he was able, when he no longer had that grasping of being in control, and he was doing that character without thinking about it at all. And one day he just went and just did that, and his master said, okay, now you've done it well, now we can learn the others. And in one day he basically taught him he taught him the most important, let's say, because there are over 3,000 characters in Chinese, and he learned so quickly. For example, to be a carpenter in Japan, a traditional carpenter in Japan, and today there still exist. If you want to be a carpenter, you need to find a master. Once you have your master, and he'll say, okay, come tomorrow. You go there, and it needs to be full time, 8 hours a day. You follow all of his job, but you don't have the right to touch neither tool nor piece of wood. For 2 or 3 years, you can only watch everything he does, 8 hours a day. And one day, the master, out of nothing, will say, take that tool and start working, and without having to explain anything to you because you've already understood. That's very different from the way we learn. We're very linear. We want to understand. We want to have a certain control over the knowledge. And we see, okay, well, now that I have learned how to do it, I know how to do it. I was talking to a doctor not too long ago who said, I have big problems. I see many young doctors who finished university. They have very little experience, and they think they know everything. And I can assure you that you learn through experience and not just through theory. This Asian way is much more based on experience, based on the fact that the knowledge that is transmitted is more circular, and you need to see it and experience it to put it all together. And in teaching the Dharma, what I've seen, that the path is much more similar to putting together a puzzle. A puzzle. And this is why traditionally things get repeated. They're repeated for many reasons. One, to make sure that everyone has understood. And number two, we repeat to fix knowledge. And number three, as we go on, we learn new things, and by hearing them again, it's not the same thing because we've understood it on a different level. Sometimes people say, oh, I've already heard that commentary, I've already heard that explanation, but we don't need novelty in our life. What we need is to deepen what we already know. One way of learning the Dharma is like putting together a puzzle. Everyone will have his own technique, but what I do for a puzzle, what I used to do, no, what I did a couple times, it's been a long time since I haven't played with a puzzle. First, I divide everything up by color, and also look for the pieces that make the border, and then you say, okay, this is the same color as this one, and then gradually you make groups. And little by little, as these groups get bigger, at a certain point they unite. And then another one can be added here and unites here, and then at a certain point from that one piece that you didn't know where to put, boom, it's made the whole image. If I take one piece and I say, what's the next piece? And I try to look for that next piece, I'll never finish putting that puzzle together. Studying the Dharma is very similar. We learn a little piece here and a little piece there, and maybe we don't see the connection to then that. So we learn this and we connect it to that, and then we see that this connects to that thing over there. And as we put the pieces together, at a certain point, the pieces, the groups start making sense. And in studying Buddha's teachings, the sadhanas, the practices, self-healing is very similar to this experience. So sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes maybe one piece of the puzzle, maybe we can put them together quickly, and then there's another part, and it's just time goes by, hours go by, and we can't find a piece, and sometimes we get nervous and we take a piece that looks similar. I remember and you force it, you try to put it in. I remember doing that. It looks it looks like it fits. You know it doesn't fit, but you're trying to convince yourself it fits. No, it's important to understand that our path is similar to putting together a puzzle. We need to put the pieces together. And it's very beautiful to be able to do this and see things again and again and see that things make more sense over time, and we start to classify things. It's like looking at the various groups. Um, Maybe one piece you can understand better, this other group you've understood conceptually but not experientially, and so we have our puzzle of various levels here. So, going back to us, the generation stage is part of the actual practice that is part of self-healing. The generation stage can be divided into two parts, the classification into two parts, the generation of bliss and emptiness and the three transformations. And the second part is the generation of the body mandala. The generation of bliss and emptiness and the transformation of the three bodies. After we do Oma Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum, the next part is a Yam Ram Lam Bam, the purification of the elements. In the purification of the elements, here we can also add other points. In the book of Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, Self-Healing 2, he added different purification practices, and the purification of the elements is one of the other practices that one can do. Why do we want to generate bliss? Because the objective is to induce into ourselves a level of love and wisdom on a non-conceptual level. Love is something that we generated at the beginning with our initial motivation, love towards ourselves, love towards others, and so the whole practice follows that line, as why am I doing this? Because I want beings to be happy. I don't want them to suffer. I myself want to get out of samsara. It's a state of love towards myself and towards other. That is the line that it follows. When we have a feeling of pleasure, something some kind of sensory pleasure from drinking a good glass of water or sex, that moment that we are enjoying that pleasure, is it a conceptual state of being or a non-conceptual experience? As we're feeling that pleasure, are we looking at the past, projecting onto the future, or are we only in that pleasure, in that present moment? And the more that we're only focused on that present moment, and the stronger the pleasure, the less conceptual our mind is. Once I've read Amdo Gendun Chuppe, who was a writer, who was one of the most important contemporary Tibetan authors, was quite the character, incredibly intelligent. He went into the Gelupa monastery. He completed all of he completed all of the teachings of philosophy to the highest degree. Nobody could debate him. He had many different levels of knowledge, and then he left the monastery. He followed the Nyingmapa tradition of like a tantric practice, and then he left Tibet. He did travel, and then he wanted to make some like social political changes. He's ended up in prison, and he was a marvelous writer, very special. there's a story about him. One day he was with someone else, and he had he was always challenging people. He didn't have an easy personality. I read his biography, and one day he went to someone that he wanted, let's say, compete with, and he said, "I'll show you what having good concentration is." I said, "Okay," and he started drinking beer until he was completely drunk, couldn't even walk. This Tibetan chant, and he was really drunk. At a certain point, he took canvas and a pen and he started drawing, and without lifting his pencil from the canvas or his paintbrush from the canvas, he was able to make a perfect image of the Buddha. And he said, this is having good concentration. So you can actually read his books, his poems that are translated. So anyway, Gendin Chipa, in one of his books, he talks about pleasure, and he said, in his opinion, one characteristic of pleasure is that it blocks conceptual mind. When finally I can relax. Because our mind never stops. I mean, we're there judging the present, projecting the future, looking back at the past. And through pleasure, pleasure induces relaxation. What happens, though, when we enter into a state of physical pleasure, often translated as bliss, in actuality, that pleasure brings the person to a state of consciousness. Let's say the stronger the pleasure, the deeper the state of consciousness that person can reach. Non-conceptual state of consciousness, and that can be deeper and deeper. But what happens is the direction the mind takes depends on the last gross thought. So if I want to induce a state of pleasure with a feeling of great attachment, I'm familiarizing myself with attachment, and so forth. So one of the keys of Vajrayana Buddhism is using the natural process of the body through the process of the development of pleasure and the so-called bliss to induce the mind into a deep state of consciousness, starting from a point of rest. So first, in that generation stage, we generate bliss. How do we do it? The purification of the 5 elements. First, we purify space at our crown, where space is the element that is present in all the other elements. It's this element that allows the other elements to interact, because without space, then there wouldn't be other elements. It would be only one thing. So this element of space allows for the other elements to interact and coexist. And Rinpoche put a lot of emphasis on the element of space, when for a long time the space element was always quite hidden. If you take the root Tantra of Guhya Samadra, at a certain point it talks about space, but then at a certain point it disappears, it's hidden, and then it comes back, and it's a little difficult. Instead, Rinpoche gave a lot of emphasis to taking into consideration the space element as the basis for the existence of the other elements. But now it's not the time to talk about that. So first we imagine that space element that we imagine in the form, the shape of a sphere, in blue in color. We imagine this this blue sphere that represents space. But this space is present in our entire body. It's mostly in our crown chakra, but also in our whole body. Almost as if before purifying the space, there's a kind of tension among the parts. And with the purification of the space element, it's almost as everything could flow and interact better, like a fluid dance among all the elements. Instead, if there's without this purification of the space element, we can't coexist peacefully. Instead, the purification of the space element is about interacting harmoniously, like a soft dance. And the mantra is Shuddhe Soha E Yam A Ho Shuddhe Soha. A is the syllable for the space element. Ho is a grammatical element for in Sanskrit. Shuddhe is clean. So A Ho, and then Soha, may it be so. So the element of space, clean, let it be so. And then we go to the wind element, and this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. There are different levels of self-healing, as we said before. On a more gross level, we're purifying our elements and imagining that the elements that are present in our body become more harmonious and that the unbalances that are there are pacified. On a deeper level, we visualize when we do the purification of wind, green in color, and the sound, and it sounds like yam and has the form of a semicircle. We imagine that the winds from above go below. When we talk about wind, the word wind, lung in Tibetan, is a translation of the Sanskrit term prana. Prana is translated sometime as energy, but it's an energy directly related to breath. Pranayama are techniques of breathing techniques. So there's a direct relationship between energy and breathing. This energy, called prana, lung in Tibetan, from my point of view, has a direct connection with our nervous system. The energy, what does the nervous system do? It gives electric impulses, energy. What we do in this moment is we direct these impulses of our nervous system through our so-called central central channel. So we imagine in our subtle body, we have a central channel that starts from our forehead that goes to our back and goes down our spinal cord, and it goes into underneath our secret it goes to the base of our spinal cord, and then we have two side channels that go from the side, and they go in to the central channel, three fingers under our navel, and then we have these energy exchanges, or energy points at our chakras. When I was studying the subtle body, I took some images of our nervous system, and I brought these to my master, and he said, there it is, when we're talking about our central, we're talking about the subtle body. But in this point, we're taking our prana, our energy, our wind, and we're bringing it into our central channel. So the central channel also has a relationship to our spinal cord. If I think in a certain way, my body sends impulses in that direction. Someone who's had a ictus, for example, who needs to learn how to walk again, it is important to imagine that one is walking. I was talking about this to a person who in Spain who has multiple sclerosis, for example, and this person sometimes can't walk, but needs to, when is having periods of not being able to walk, needs to imagine again and again walking, and then the action and the brain, the body finds these ways to walk again. So, for example, if in the old, in our modern way of explaining, we send an impulse from our brain that touches our muscles, and that it actually moves our arm or whatever it is. But in the antique, the old texts, the explanation came from the wind, like the wind. I'd think of a place, and then the wind, this prana, would be the what actually moves our arm or whatever it is. So when we concentrate of Yam Ho Shude Shude Soha, we concentrate all our energy at the bases of our central channel, and we imagine all of our winds, all of this prana that from above goes below, and from below come up, and they come into the central channel just under our navel. And when we do this, if you do it calmly, you can do it with a certain breathing. And our breathing, we can direct our energy down, and then we can contract our lower doors, our pelvic muscles, and contain our energy in that central channel. And once all that energy is in the central channel, it'll start to go up. Once it comes up to our navel, it finds fire, our digestive fire. The Kundalini is in other contexts. We say this inner fire, and we imagine at our navel this fire. And it's like a little flame at the beginning. You can even imagine just a little piece of burning coal. And as what happens to coal when the wind blows, it grows. So we focus our attention there, and as the wind enters our central channel, the fire at our navel starts to grow, and we put all of our tension there. This fire that grows and grows and grows. And where does the fire grow? It goes above, within the central channel. It starts to go up. When it gets towards our chest, there's the earth element, and we imagine that all of our chest starts heating up. This yellow earth with the sound of lam, like a square. And earth starts to heat up, purifying it. And we imagine this heat like a kind of oven. There's someone who keeps blowing and blowing, and the fire is growing, it's heating up more and more. And this heat gets to our throat, where there's the white element of water that resounds with the sound of bam, like a kind of lake on the earth. So there's the earth, and on top of the earth there's this kind of round lake. when we visualize these things, if you look in the book of self-healing, there's also the drawings of the shapes, and people think that to visualize that one needs to just visualize those forms. No, it's wind, it's fire. Fire is triangular, it grows, and then there's earth that heats up, there's water that heats up, and as the water heats up, it starts to evaporate and goes up, and it comes into contact with our crown chakra, and it condenses, and what happens is it melts a substance in our subtle body called white bodhicitta. It's connected to male energy that comes from our father and the state of bliss. In a simple way, we visualize this water that goes towards our crown, this vapor that goes towards our crown, that condenses and then comes down like a fresh rain, a rain of nectar, white nectar that comes down from our crown chakra within our central channel. And as this nectar comes down, it's like when there's something that starts to boil and it needs to go somewhere and it starts to overflow. So this nectar starts coming down through our central channel, and as it's coming down, it comes into contact with the various channels of our chakras. At our crown, there are 32 channels, and it expands. It goes into every channel. At our throat, there's 16 channels, and it goes through all those channels. At our heart, there are 8 channels, and it goes through into each one of the channels. At our navel, there's 64 channels, and when it gets to our secret chakra, there are 32 channels, and it goes through this white bodhicitta, goes through these channels too. So as we do this, we imagine this bliss, because the feeling of this nectar that comes down is that wherever it goes, it brings this feeling of overwhelming bliss. An experience. The experience is stronger than being able to understand the experience. This feeling of pleasure that as it comes down, it fills up our body. We feel this pleasure that goes through our entire body, our eyes, our nose, our ears, into our chest, into our hands, and to the tips of our toes. Our entire body is in a deep state of bliss. Once, someone came to me saying that he had a special experience. He was a little embarrassed and didn't know how to tell me the whole experience. He said, as I was doing the mantra of the Guru, first I felt this like heat that was going up, 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 and then at a certain point, it was like an orgasm that just never ended, a never-ending orgasm. And that's what we call bliss. But what is described is that feeling is much stronger than what one can achieve through the natural processes of the body. So let's imagine in this phase, I mean, we're in the generation phase, we're imagining, we're training, we imagine this because our winds follow the direction we give it. So we imagine the wind that comes in, the fire that grows. It's possible that when one does this, one starts to feel inner heat. One of the most important masters who came to the West, named Lama, and of the many things that he taught quite soon the practice of tumo, meditation to generate the inner fire. And it's said that he would teach this because he said the Westerns, they need to experience things to believe it. So when they have a meditation that brings them and to have a non-conceptual experience and something moves inside, they understand that meditation is not just thought. If we do this meditation with the correct concentration, it does generate heat. I'm talking about the three fingers under the navel. We imagine that this heat goes up, and then as it gets to our crown chakra, and then it melts and it brings down this bliss. So A at our crown, and then Yam, wind, Ram, fire, Lam, earth, Bam, water. So crown, secret chakra, navel, heart, then our throat, because it's our space that is mostly at our crown chakra, but it's also throughout our entire body, and then the wind goes through into our central channel. It makes the fire grow, heats up the earth, and purifies the water. And the Shuddha Soha that we do after goes from the crown down to our secret chakra. It doesn't follow the same order of, because once the fire has grown and then has evaporated the water and melts the white bodhicitta of bliss, and once we do the Shuddha Soha, this nectar that comes down, that generates this bliss, it purifies all impurities. So it's also described that one of the characteristics of a strong feeling of inner pleasure, orgasm or others that can exist, is it's something that unblocks energetic blocks that are there within our subtle channels. So when we feel anger and jealousy, etc., there's something called lungi ro. Lung is wind, prana, energy. Ro is a word that can mean taste in one context, or can mean corpse. So Tibetan is quite a particular language. That's why translating is not easy. For example, tea. When you finish the tea bag, what is left is called cha ro. Cha is tea and ro is corpse. It's the corpse of the tea. And so it's something that it's something, but it's not what it was before. So the corpse of energy are energetic blocks that stay within our central channel from past negative emotions. So when, for example, if we get very angry, even when the anger has passed, something stays. Same thing with sadness, etc. There are practices like the 9-cycle breathing meditation, Lung Ro Gudrup. It's a respiration, the technique in 9 cycles to eliminate the energetic corpses. This is a kind of breathing technique. So this helps purify energetic blocks that are within our system. So as we do Eyam Ram Lam Bam, and then A ho Shuddha Soha, Yam ho Shuddha Soha, Ram ho Shuddha Soha, Lam ho Shuddha Soha, Bam ho Shuddha Soha, Eyam Ram Lam Bam ho Shuddha Soha. We can repeat it once, 5 times, etc. When we do it more superficially, we imagine, as I said before, these energetic blocks they melt, and we eliminate these energetic blocks related to the various elements. doing it more deeply, as I explained before, ideally to do it better, first we should recite it once or twice as you wish, and then one should be silent. Or you recite one at a time. Eho shude shude soha, eho shude shude soha, and then yam ho shude shude soha, yam ho shude shude soha, and as we recite the as we recite, we imagine the wind that comes in, and then Ram ho shude shude soha, the fire that grows, and the earth then that heats up. Lam ho shude shude soha, lam ho shude shude, and then bam ho shude shude soha, the water that heats up and evaporates. It would be important here to not be in a hurry, especially if you're at the beginning. Allow yourself to let yourself go and experience this state of bliss. Within this state of bliss, then we go to the next phase. Is this clear? And here we have the purification of the elements. In reality, the practice of self-healing incorporates many practices. Just this is a marvelous practice. And what really touches me when I started understanding self-healing better, this part, for example, the one of elements, maybe it seems obvious, but there's nothing obvious here. I mean, the way it's explained normally we just use symbolism that is really not so easy to understand. For example, this object is called the inner offering, Nangchu. And in many sadhanas, to generate bliss, it's the same process that we just described. But instead of explaining it directly, symbolism is used that for most of us mean nothing. So what does this represent? Let me just show it to you a little bit better. So what's the form of here, this underneath? This is this half circle. I'm not sure if this is very sure. So what's the element of the half circle? The wind. And then above we have a triangle. And there are heads. There are 3 heads on top of this triangle. One that has just been cut, like a chopped off head, one that is rotting, and one that is completely dry. And then on top, there's a skull. That part of the head upside down, so it's a half skull. And then inside, we visualize the 5 meats and the 5 nectars. So we have elephant, horse, dog, cow, and human meat. Then we visualize the 5 nectars. Then we have urine, feces, sperm, blood, and bone marrow. And then we have the 5 meats in the cardinal directions, and in the other directions we have the nectars. And then we have the pennants, the banners, that when the wind blows, the fire grows, and it transforms all of that into a kind of nectar color, the color of mercury. And then above there are the syllables Om Ahum that dissolve into the substance and purify it. So that half circle is the wind. The triangle is the The triangle is the fire, and the three heads represents the real nature that understands the correct view of reality, and the five meats and the five nectars inside the skull that represent our body and mind, the five aggregates. So the five nectars are the five aggregates, body and mind, and and the five meats. Sorry, the five nectars are the five elements, and the five meats represent the five aggregates. All of this to generate bliss. Why the skull cup? In the practice of self-healing, where does the bliss come down? Where is it generated? From the head. It's because it's said that this white bodhicitta resides in the crown. So it's an external representation of an inner process. And this is really part of the secrets that I was telling about before. Rinpoche, instead, he made it all very accessible to us. So when we see this in the sadhanas like Yamantaka or Kurukule, at the beginning, before the three transformations, there's what's called the transformation of the inner offering, where we transform body and mind, generating an inner state of bliss. This is what it represents. But symbolism for us seems a little bit dark, or strange even. And Rinpoche, he put it as a Yamram Lambam. It is much more accessible, much more direct for us. So we're able to really understand its meaning. And through self-healing, I was able to understand better the inner offering and transformation of the inner offering. Once we were at Albagnano and we were giving a commentary on the sadhana of Yamantaka, and I came back from the teachings, I was at lunch with Rinpoche, and there was also the abbot of the monastery of Sharganda, now the ex-abbot Kensur, and Rinpoche asked me what I explained. And I said, oh, today I explained the inner offering. And he asked me how I explained it. And so I started explaining more or less what I just explained to you now, that there's the symbolism, there's the meaning, and our final objective is to generate this inner bliss. And the abbot at that point said, wow, how beautiful and how lucky you are here. Here, they just gave teachings of, they would give us the teachings on the sadhana of Yamantaka, but they would only give us the symbolism without explaining the meaning. I mean, and as I said before, the whole process of study is much different in the East because they need to go round and round and round, and they have the time to do that, and then one day you understand. And it's marvelous when that happens. But in our context, in the times in which we live, I don't know how much space, time, and ability we have to go round and round and round and round until we get that insight. Just to share a little bit what we're talking about here, it's not to be taken for granted. Another special characteristic of Lama Kanchen Rinpoche was this openness. So the purification of the elements is something that we can do. Maybe we want to put only emphasis on this. I invite you to do each part of the practice, with attention. Maybe you spend a whole week 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour, just focusing on one of the parts. Here, maybe the purification of the 5 elements, one at a time. And when we conclude the purification of the 5 elements with this feeling of bliss that just invades every part of body and mind, then we do the next part, which is how to generate emptiness. The generation of emptiness, which is the lack of inherent existence, comes with this following mantra, which is Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sobhava Shuddham. When we do this mantra, the meaning explains itself, but let's look. Om, so body, speech, and mind, as we said before. Sobhava. Om, there are many, many translations, but let's just stay on body, speech, and mind of one's existence. Sobhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma. Sobhava means nature. Shuddha, Shuddha, what does that mean? Shuddha, Shuddha, clean. Om, Sobhava, nature. Shuddha, clean. Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma. Sarva means all. Dharma means phenomena. So nature, pure, clean, all phenomena. Sobhava Shuddha Aham. Sobhava, nature. Shuddha, pure. Aham, I am. So literally is Om, nature pure or nature clean, all phenomena, nature pure, I am. What does that mean if something is clean? It means that it's free from dirt, filth. So when we use the term Shuddha, it's something that is free from something dirty. If we were to make a more commentated translation, it would be Om, all phenomena are free, are empty, to be free from, or they lack an autonomous, intrinsic, independent, objective existence, and so do I. So am I. I am free from. I am free from from an objective, independent existence. When we see something, how does it appear to us? There's a tree. The tree is there, and I'm here. I don't have anything to do with that tree. Does it appear to us like that, or does it appear? Does it appear as being a reflection of the complex interdependence between me, the observer, and the tree, my object of observation. Or, for example, when I ring the singing bell, do we understand it as something subjective that exists depending all the parts that interact? I mean, how does it appear to us spontaneously? I mean, without philosophizing, these things appear to us. I mean, it's there, and I'm here. So reality appears to us constantly as if it existed objectively, independently, autonomously. This is the way reality, and when I say reality, every perception, even the perception of ourselves, when we perceive the self appears to us as if it were independent, autonomous, independent of the interactions with others. Here we get into a concept that in quantum physics is explained perfectly, and it is very much in line with the Buddhist philosophy, which is nothing exists if not independence in relation to other phenomena. It's not possible to identify something beyond their interactions. It doesn't exist. It's not possible. But when something appears to us, are we able to grasp this complexity? No. So reality appears to us as if it existed objectively, autonomously, independently. Objective in the sense that it exists as it appears to me, independently of the observer. It's autonomous and independent because it doesn't depend on all those relationships to be what it is. It is like that. Stop. That's how we perceive reality. And this is the root of our suffering. This ignorance of grasping to reality of phenomena and of ourselves as if we existed independently, objectively, autonomously, as if we were intrinsically existent. This is our greatest ignorance. And from here comes the obsession of self-grasping and selfishness, attachment, aversion, and all the other and all the mental defilements. So to eliminate this ignorance at its root is to eliminate it on a gross, subtle, and very subtle level by opposing it with the wisdom of the opposite. So here, Om Sobawa Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sobawa Shuddha Ham. Om, all phenomenon, everything that appears to me and myself. It appears as being autonomous and independent, but actually the phenomenon are free from all of this dirt. What is the dirt? Dirt is intrinsic existence. It's not that everything it has a pure nature. Like the word pure means to be free from something, free from some filth. The dirt here is something that we project onto it, something that we project but that doesn't exist. I dirty reality with the idea that reality exists independently, objectively, intrinsically. These are, they're all synonyms here. So Om, all phenomenon, everything that exists, lacks inherent existence, is of a pure nature. I am also of a pure nature. I lack inherent existence. When we realize this, when we start realizing this, because we're not able to see and relate to reality in an interdependent way, but as if it were objective. And when we start understanding this, maybe we feel uneasy and fearful, as if we didn't exist. But at this moment, we should try to connect with the idea that everything that exists, and even ourselves, nothing exists autonomously, inherently. But in what state are we experiencing this lack of intrinsic existence? Bliss. So in that state of bliss and pleasure, and I maintain that pleasure, that experience, and then I perceive that I realize that everything that I perceive, including myself, everything is empty of intrinsic existence, and nothing exists as it appears. We deconstruct appearance done with bliss, and this is what we call the union of bliss and emptiness. The union of bliss and emptiness is where bliss is the observer, is the inner state of being, where the person realizes and has the object of perception, which is the lack of inherent existence. So bliss naturally brings us to a non-conceptual state. So we use bliss as a vehicle, as a means to enter into a deeper state of consciousness that comes from love and compassion, that perceives the lack of inherent existence with a state of bliss. If we take the Tantra of Guhya Samatra, called the King of Tantras, one of the most important texts of Lama Tsongkhapa is the commentary of the Tantra of Guhya Samatra. The commentary is divided into three parts: how to generate bliss, how to generate emptiness, and how to unite bliss and emptiness. This is the essence. So, now at this point, let's try to just see that everything is empty of inherent existence. So, and to do this, take one object. It's said that it's easier to understand the lack of inherent existence by observing phenomena, but it's easier actually to meditate on the lack of inherent existence by taking oneself as an object of meditation. In this moment, we can choose one specific object, be it ourselves or an external object, and we see how it appears. We see how it appears as being inherently existent, and then we deconstruct that, and then we end up with a mere negation. It is not like that. A little bit like if we took a sound. It appears to us as being something completely autonomous and different from us, but if we start to look at all the parts that compose that experience that we call sound, are we able just to see that sound anymore? No, we lose sound, the point of we lose the sight of the sound. It's also said that in every instant there are innumerable possibilities. A very simple example would be this object here. Let's call it singing bowl. I mean, how many things could it be? Some examples could be a bowl. If we turn it upside down, it could be a kind of seed, or maybe you can use it as a weapon, or maybe you could hit someone over the head with it. You can protect yourself with it. You can use it as a chamber pot during the night. So what determines what it is? It's the observer, the name given, the value that we attribute to it. And in the same moment, this object and all other objects have innumerable possibilities, but in our ignorance, we choose one among the many, and we think that that is its reality, that it is that. So what happens at a certain point, I see the object and I understand that that object is the union of infinite number of possibilities. It's like I can't see the singing bowl anymore. I lose sight of it among all those possibilities, and that's what happens here in this moment of the practice. We concentrate on the simple fact that nothing is objective. It's the infinite possibilities. So our objective is to have a deep non-conceptual experience that is opposite of the grasping of inherent existence. And when this unites with the bliss, it's like a bomb, much stronger than any kind of conceptual thought. So when we say here, Om Sabo Ashuddha Sarva Dharma Sabo Ashuddha Ham, all phenomena, Om, all phenomenon are of a pure nature, and so am I am of a pure nature. We focus on the inherent existence of phenomena and ourselves through the mind of bliss. And ideally, we should generate the bliss and emptiness. And ideally, this bliss, the union of bliss and emptiness, should stay with us through the entire practice. So this state of bliss that recognizes the lack of intrinsic existence of all phenomena. And with this, we conclude the part of generating bliss and emptiness with Om Sabo Ashuddha Sarva Dharma Sabo Ashuddha Ham. I gave you just a brief explanation. And now we go on to the three transformations. The three transformations. I will explain in a simple and brief explanation, but we could spend days. It's a crucial, central, fundamental part of the generation stage. It's said that it's a practice. It's said that a generation stage without the three transformations is incomplete. The three transformations contain the transformation. We transform death into Dharmakaya, we transform the Bardo into Sambhogakaya, and we transform rebirth in Nirmanakaya. We transform death into the Dharmakaya, this body and mind, the very subtle mind and body of a Buddha, the body of truth, the truth body, and the Bardo into the Sambhogakaya, the subtle mind and body of a Buddha, the enjoyment body, and then we transform the rebirth into Nirmanakaya, into the gross body and mind of a Buddha. So let's start with the first one, and then the others are actually quite quick to explain. What we're going to do now is one of my favorite parts of the meditation, which is simulating the death process. Because how can I generate a pure identity if I'm still grasping at my gross identity? Because let's remember that a crucial point of the practice is to identify ourselves with the qualities and the aspects of a Buddha, allow ourselves to experience being a Buddha. So to do it, really, to be convinced of it, I need to let go of this ordinary appearance that I have. So what's the best way to get rid of my ordinary appearance? That I'm a being full of trauma and full of jealousy and anger. I need to die. Oh, wonderful. Not that it's beautiful to die. I am in no way trying to induce someone to go towards their own death. But in meditation, what do? At this point, we simulate the death process. And the beautiful thing here is when we do this part of the practice, the better we do this part, the more released we are, the more release we find from this ordinary identity that we've created. I mean, we have an identity, and we're quite attached to this identity, ordinary identity of being traumatized, of being angry, of being resentful, etc. So how can I relate to being a Buddha if I am all these other negative things? So I need to let go. So we simulate the death process, and you can do it extremely detailed way or a more generalized way. When we do it in a detailed way, we meditate on the earth that goes into water, the water that goes into fire, the fire that goes into wind, wind goes into the space of consciousnness. Then we have a white view, a red view, the white vision, a red vision, and then the black near attainment, and then we have the experience of death. And of death and the clear light. We're not going to get into all of that right now, but it's really important for us. It's important for us to know this process, which is a real preparation for our actual death. But in a simple way, we can imagine that the entire universe around us dissolves into light. And when we imagine that everything starts to dissolve into light, it's not that we are imagining that reality dissolves, but our ability to perceive actually ceases. There's a difference. Do you understand the difference? Because when we fall asleep, for example, what is the first of our five senses that stops working is our sight, and we can't keep our eyes open. And then what? Our hearing. The sounds are far away. Have you ever fallen asleep while someone's talking? I have. And what happens is, at the beginning, you have your eyes open, and then your eyes close, and you're like, I'm listening, and then the sounds, they're far away, and then maybe when you wake up, you can't remember anything. This is similar to the death process. So imagine in meditation that everything starts to dissolve from outside in, and the description given is that as we talked about emanations of light, it's like a lake and a rock that falls into a lake, and it just the ripples go out and out, and instead the absorption is like when we do hadap in Tibetan, when we fog up a glass in the winter time, then it gets all foggy, and then as it dries up, does it dry up from the center out or from the outside in? And then little by little, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it just disappears. Similarly, we imagine that the universe dissolves like that. So it starts dissolving, 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 dissolving. I add light to this because when we get to the end, it's this clear light. Instead of dissolving into darkness, actually you can do it in both ways. But I think it's better that everything dissolves into light. We imagine that everything starts dissolving, 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 and at the end there's nothing other than our body. So we still feel touch, but and then we lose our sense of touch, and all the impulses of our central nervous system that just absorbs into our heart, and the winds dissolve into our hearts. We lose contact with our five senses, and everything dissolves at our heart. And there's nothing other than an infinite, empty brightness. So we imagine this infinite, empty brightness, inseparable from a deep bliss. That bliss from before is still there. So we experience all of this through the feeling of bliss. And every step, we say, okay, this is dissolving. It seems like it's this, but it's not. It is empty of inherent existence. So also this idea of the lack of inherent existence is also present. And at this point, there's nothing other than an infinite, luminous emptiness, empty of inherent existence. Also because, this empty, this great, bright brightness, it could appear to us as being solid, and yet that is not. And this whole experience comes through a state of bliss. So wherever there is this wherever there is a lack of inherent existence, there's bliss, and wherever there's bliss, there's a lack of inherent existence, and wherever there is the bliss and the emptiness, there I am. I am the union of this bliss and emptiness, the Dharmakaya, the mind and body of a Buddha on a very subtle level, and we stay in the state for as long as we can. I summarized something that is very complex and long, but you're able to understand a little bit this process of meditation. Just imagine everything dissolved, and there's no me, there's no you, there's not this or there's that. It's all, and not in the sense we're not simulating its non-existence. We're simulating our own death process where we are no longer able to connect or to come into contact with the external phenomena or with our inner senses. And this state of clear light, this clear light of death, transforms into the Dharmakaya, the very subtle body and mind of a Buddha. So when we get to this state in meditation, it's called the meditation of the transformation of death into Dharmakaya. After a while that we're in that state, it's almost as if we said to ourselves, okay, but to benefit other beings, I need to show myself. So out of this subtle state, I manifest myself in a grosser form, which is still subtle. So I manifest in a body of light, often described as a beam of light, as big as a forearm. In this case, in the sound of hum. And this is the transformation of the intermediate state of the bardo into the body of into the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. But then at that point, from this subtle body, I need to be of more benefit. No, the sentient beings, they can't see me in this with this subtle body. So I need to take a gross level, and so you can do this. You can do this in a quick way, or the death process backwards. So from this body of light, I arise in an instant into a gross, coarse body. More detailed, it would be that gradually, I gradually come out with a light body, but with arms and then legs. I imagine I have a strong central channel, 2 side channels that are weaker, 5 chakras that are completely balanced. And at this point, if we want, we can do a really beautiful meditation, which is a kind of analysis meditation on our subtle body. And these are just additions. So before continuing with the practice, it's possible to do a kind of tour of our subtle body. We imagine that one's vision is within one's own body. So you go from above and below, and you look down through your central channel and you see the other chakras, and then you go down and you look up and you see you go down and you look up and you see where the chakras meet. And doing like this, we train in having a view that overcomes, that goes beyond our ordinary relationship with our body. Because, for example, often we visualize from outside as if we visualize ourselves as if we're looking into a mirror. Instead, we need to visualize from within, because when we can visualize from within, this ability to bring our full attention within ourselves is what allows allows for the winds, our energy winds, to actually go in our central channel, because our body follows where our mind goes. So when I can bring my attention fully within my central channel, I'm bringing my energy there. And the higher practices, most of them happen within the central channel. One of the very important contemporary masters, NgalSo, he said at a certain point, any time that you spend outside your central channel is time wasted. That's a famous phrase that he said. We're not wasting time. We're working towards getting there. Obviously, though, the experience, being able to bring one's own energy within the central channel is, a state based on love and compassion, a mind full of bliss that realizes emptiness. There are no words to being able to direct such a mind. And with this, we conclude what we call generation of bliss, generating emptiness, and the 3 transformations. Are you following? Just more or less in these passages. Generally speaking, most sadhanas, the meditation practices, they end here. Once there's the generation stage, then there's the recitation of the mantra, where we do the simulation of the sacred activities of a Buddha, and then there's a conclusion. What we're going to do now is a practice where in the state of the state within the generation stage, there's also the generation of the body mandala and the 4 initiations. So let's look at the next part quickly. It seems complicated, but putting these puzzle pieces together, at a certain point, the pieces come together more easily. The second page is divided into 5 parts. Well, let me see. We've got in 5 parts. The generation stage in general is divided into 5 parts, and then there's also the body mandala. So the generation that comes from emptiness, from the lotus flowers, from the seed syllables, from the symbols, and the complete image of the Buddha, of the body of the Buddha. So what we're going to do now, first of all, we're going to generate lotus flowers in our chakras that represent, in reality, our energy channels completely balanced. And tomorrow we'll pick this up again. But the lotus flowers represent our energy channels perfectly balanced. So now we have a pure body, the body of Vajrasattva, or one of the 5 great mothers. We visualize ourselves in this state, this pure body, completely balanced. And at this point, we concentrate at 1 chakra at a time, starting at our secret chakra, and we visualize that at each one of our chakras, a lotus flower appears. And at the center of the lotus flower is the same diameter of the central channel. And each of the petals is one of the energy channels that enter into the central channel. So at the secret chakra, there's a 32 petaled green lotus flower. At the navel, there is a 64 yellow petaled lotus flower, 8 petaled blue lotus flower at our heart, 16 a red 16 petaled lotus flower at our throat, and again a white 32 petaled lotus flower at our crown. And so the diameter of the center of the flower is the size of our central channel, and the petals are the actual channels that then connect to our whole system of channels. So more than plant, we're highlighting the potential that we have next here with the seed syllables. A seed syllable, the name itself tells us already a lot. What is a syllable? It's a sound. So it's a sound, vibration, energy. So a syllable is a sound, it's a vibration, it's energy. A seed, what do we mean by seed? Something that contains a potential, something that can develop and become much greater, but starts from that essence. So we, in each one of our chakras, we imagine a seed syllable like a point of light as big as a mustard seed. It's very small, and has its respective color that vibrates with the respective sound, and has all the potential to develop all the qualities of the various Dhyani Buddhas. The more aware we are, the more we know the qualities of the Dhyani Buddhas, the more we understand the potential in the seed syllable. So in the seed syllable of the seed syllable relative to Amoghasiddhi have the essence of all of his qualities, of not having fear, being able to rejoice, etc. That is not something outside, it's something that we recognize within our chakra. And then tomorrow we'll go more into details. For each one of these seed syllables, we will create the right conditions, as if we were watering these seeds so they can give the fruit of the fully developed potential. So what we do in self-healing, the seed syllables transform into symbols like the sprout, and from the sprout is developed into the actual to one of the Dhyani Buddhas. So as we do this, we identify ourselves with this. We have a green Amoghasiddhi at our secret chakra, yellow Ratnasambhava at our navel, blue Akshobhya at our heart. We have a red Amitabha at our throat, white Veruchana at our crown. Tomorrow we will add that when we do the body mandala generation, there are 3 possibilities. Or we do the generation of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, or the 5 Great Mothers, or the 5 Dhyani Buddhas together with the 5 Great Mothers. The 5 Dhyani Buddhas together with the 5 Great Mothers, and tomorrow we'll explain this a little bit better. Representing actually our qualities. So we identify ourselves with these qualities, and we identify ourselves with the power of rejoicing, of generosity, of humbleness, of love, of compassion, etc. We identify ourselves more and more with these qualities. This is what we'll do. Okay? Now, when I thought to do three days on self-healing, I thought of doing something totally different. But I think, how can I say? What we have written, we can access that easily. Sitting down to do the practice, we can all do that too. It's beautiful also to do it together. But there are certain passages, there are certain things that I mean, it's important to have an oral transmission about. It's important to share this, to somehow. So I'm really trying to give my best. You don't need to worry, oh, this is all too difficult. It's important here in front of the map to see the steps that are necessary, and then one puts emphasis on where one is, and then we repeat these passages so that when I actually need to do that, I have the means. I'm familiarized with it. We shouldn't think I'll never be able. I mean, well, of course, if we never leave the house just with our map in our pocket, then then we won't go forward. But if we take our map and we can rejoice. Okay, today I took 2 steps in front of, there are millions of steps to take in front of me, but we don't worry about those steps. We rejoice for the 2 steps that we took, and then we have the map is clear to us, and so that the next day we know what the next 2 steps are. Otherwise, we just stay home with the map in our hands, looking at photos of our heroes who actually who took this journey. I mean, I tell you, the only reason why I'm explaining what I'm explaining is because I really trust you. I believe in you. I'm convinced that each one of you is capable of practicing, of meditating more deeply. It takes time. Everyone has his own process, but I'm convinced that you can do it. And it's something that we need to hear again and again and do again and again. There are moments where everything seems absolutely clear, other moments where everything is all fogged down. And we need to pick it up again. I remember when I received teachings on the practice of Vajrayogini, and everything seemed so clear. And then I didn't do the practice for a while. I picked it up, and it was all unclear to me. So then I need to go back and pick it up again, clarify again. It's okay. So try to be aware as we do the practice of self-healing. And today, if you could quietly just go through the points of the practice again inside. You can actually do the practice or just mentally go through the passages of the practice and try to focus on the inner experience together with the visualizations more than what we actually recite. Try to understand what we want to generate. Some points will be clear, some points will be less clear. Don't worry. And as we put the puzzle pieces together, it becomes clearer. And then, and then we get to that first level, and we say, okay, I've done it all. Okay, now we need to go deeper, and we start again on a deeper level. It's time for our dedications. Let's do something before we conclude. We need only 5 minutes. I'm not able to hold back. do the practice of self-healing together very quickly, and tomorrow we'll do it. With con calma. We'll do it slowly, obviously without explanations. We'll just do it quickly. Inhale. And exhale.
Namo Gurubhye, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Gurubhye, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Gurubhye, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Triratnaya, Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonamla, Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi, Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki, Drola Pinchre Sangye Drubrasho, Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonamla, Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi, Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki, Drola Pinchre Sangye Drubrasho, Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonam, Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi, Dagi Jinso Gibe Son. Drola Pinchira Sangye Drubrasho, Simchen Tamchen, Dewa Dan, Dewe Gyudan, Dembra Gyuche, Simchen Tamche, Dunga Dan, Dunga Gi Gyudan, Travara Gyur, Simchen Tamche, Dunga Mebe, Dewa Dan, Mi Trewa Gyuche, Simchen Tamche, Nirinch. Tanyola Nepra Kyurche, Simchen Tamche, Lusim Gi, Dunga Le Soshin, Trayun Lusim, Dewa Dan, Dembra Gyurche, Simchen Tamche, NgalSo Top. China Nujo Koryo Tanshin Tsangma Negurche Simchen Tamche Dan Zambu Lingi Kendro Tan Chinangi Shide Tan Tukun Dembra Kyurche Tamche Duni Sashida Semala Zome Bada Ladi Tanyam Bendorie Ranshin Jambo Negurche Hadami Chebeze Ngosum Shadan Yikir Kunsan Chetrin Lana Me Namke Kangun Kyapkurche Om Namo Bhagavate Benza Sarva Pramadane Tatagataya Arahate Samya Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Benze Benzema Benzema Tetsa Benzema Vidya Benzema Bodhicitta Benzema Bodhi Mandupa Sangramana Benze Sarva Karma Avarana Vishodana Benze Svo Kuncho Sumgi Dembada Sangedan Chanju Sempa Tamchekich Tsonyi Yonso Zobe Ngadan Chimbodan Chuki Yinambra Tajin Samgi Mikyape Topgi Tishi Nitu Kyurach Malu Simche Kungi Gungurchi Dude Pungche Mize Jumze La Ngona Malu Yanda Kengurup Chumden Korche Nedir Sheksu So Gosungube Gone Chalcelo Ngoshan Yitru Chopa Malu Tomene Sadikdon Tamchesha Kepra Gewa Namla Jairang Korwa Maton Bardo Lekshun Drola Chuki Korlo Korwa Dan Dashengenan Chenchu Chemborongo Sashi Puge Chushi Metotra Lirablin Shinyi De Gemba De Sange Shinto Mikte Ulwargi Rogunamda Shinla Chobrasho Yedam Guru Ratna Mandra Tayami Lojo Sambo Pagyu Trishipa Tuche Tembe Trinle Yarngod Pege Drolo Zambe Zebrache Panden Lame Shabla Sowade Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Saneka Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsamanya Sarva Siddhi Hong Hong Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Saneka Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsamanya Sarva Siddhi Hong Hong Oma Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Saneka Uta Vardani Shri Badra Varsamanya Sarva Siddhi Hong Hong Om Guru Buddha Siddhi 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 Om Guru Buddha Siddhi Hong Eyam Ram Lam Bam Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha E Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Yam Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Ram Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Bam Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Bama Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Eyam Ram Lam Bam Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Om Swabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Swabhava Shuddha. Pamle Pema Chango, Pamle Pema Chango, Pamle Pema Serpo, Pamle Pema Serpo, Pamle Pema Ngompo, Pamle Pema Ngompo, Pamle Pema Marpo, Pamle Pema Marpo, Pamle Pema Carpo, Pamle Pema Carpo. Om Ahum Tramari Rile Natso Dorje Changur He Tramle Norbo Serpo Tram Hongle Dorje Ngombo Hong Ale Pema Marpo A Omle Korlo Karpo Om Korlo Nanse Dorje A Pema Che Dorje Hon dorje mikyo dorje trama norbu rinchun dorje re natso dorje tunyun dorje lama tunyun dorje ke om amoga siddhi hon lama rinchun dorje ke om a ratna sambhava hon lama mikyo dorje ke om a akshobhya hon Lama che dorje ke Om a Amitabha Hong Lama nangze dorje ke Om a Vairochana Hong. Om Mani Peme Hong 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 Om Mahasukha 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 Hong Om Vishwa Shanti Hong. Lama kuncho sumla kyepsu chi rangi la se dotri sungne che donga cho sun nircho tada dom gecho kundu chishin rotun chi dorna ditsu namkara gewe tso chinye sakpa tei nyurtu da norbu panzo shamba larkene lame lamge rimpa tar chin shu jetsun lame kutse rapten chi namkara trinle chokchur gepa tam Lo san tempe drume sas drove munsel taktu ne gyur chi kyewa kuntu yanda lama dan dralme cheki pela long chi sada lamge yente rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyur tobe sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele kshin Nintzen takto delek pe koncho sumki chingi lob koncho sumki ngodrubo tsol koncho sumki trashi
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our life with various signs of auspiciousness. In this way, we conclude for today. Tomorrow, we will pick up again at 10:30. Even if tomorrow is Monday, it's not just any Monday. So there's since the course and everything, so there won't be the teachings of morning inspirations as we do morning inspirations. Also, just to give space to the teaching. So we'll see you for teachings at 10:30, and we'll conclude the practice of self-healing. Thank you to everyone. Have a good rest. Have a nice, have good dinner, and we'll see you tomorrow.